Welcome to American Black Journal. I'm Stephen Henderson. This year marks the 25th anniversary of Forgotten Harvest, a food rescue operation based in Oak Park, Michigan. The organization was founded to help relieve hunger and prevent the waste of nutritious food. Last year, Forgotten Harvest rescued nearly 49 million pounds of food donated by farms, grocers, manufacturers, and dairies. The food is delivered to hundreds of agencies free of charge. There's also Forgotten Harvest Farms, which has produced millions of pounds of fresh vegetables to help feed the hungry. Nearly 1 in 5 people in Metro Detroit face hunger. My first guest today is the CEO of Forgotten Harvest, Kirk Mayes. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
25 years, that's amazing. But of course, over that 25 years, this is not a problem that we have solved. And that's why Forgotten Harvest is still as important today as it was when it started.
Absolutely. The need in our community for people who are struggling to make ends meet is a consistent problem. It is a human need. So the work of Forgotten Harvest, based on what our mission really was inspired to accomplish, is still absolutely a need.
Yeah.
And of course, unfortunately, the phenomenon and the consistent food waste that our country produces is also something that it actually has grown.
That's getting worse.
Over time.
Right.
It is getting worse. So last year, the USDA reported that 70 billion pounds of food is being wasted within the United States. Between 25 to 40% of the food that we produce for consumption is actually being wasted.
We don't. And talk about how that happens. How does food that's supposed to end up either, you know, on your plate at home or on your plate in a restaurant, how does it end up being wasted?
There's so many different ways that it happens that I think it's really mind-boggling for folks when they really get a chance to get close to some of the stories. So everything from the things that you see at your grocery store, on your grocery store shelves that don't meet retail specs anymore, either it's gotten to the shelf life date,
right.
the sell-by date,
yeah.
which in almost every instance, the food that has not reached sell-by date actually still is good and edible food.
It's good past that date.
Yeah, there are also overproduction of produce in certain areas, and produce being a perishable item. So for instance, there's tons and tons of tomatoes and cucumbers and green peppers and that kind of stuff that are grown in hydroponic farming operations in Canada. And when they produce past their need, there's an excess that becomes waste, or maybe there's an item that doesn't meet the retail spec of that particular grower going to market. And those are just a few ways that we've been able to identify and capture some food waste that's happening in our local area.
Right, and you guys take the food and you repurpose it, you give it to agencies that are helping to feed the poor.
Exactly. When we are doing our grocery pickup from the retail locations, for instance, the way that we actually implement that program is that our trucks leave largely in the mornings empty, and they come back in the afternoons empty. So we have our drivers hitting about 12 to 15 places to pick up food at our local retailers, and then they take it straight to about 3 or 4 community agencies to drop it off. So if we do get the milk that has passed its shelf life, it's getting to a family that day.
Right.
So you still have all that time in your refrigerator at your home to be able to consume that stuff. It's a lot what we buy sometimes.
Right. One of the things that I've always thought was true and heard is true is that, and you seem to be backing this up, there's no good reason for people to be hungry in this country. We have enough food. We produce enough food. The problem is matching the production and the distribution of that food with need. So you have places like Detroit where you have high concentrations of people who either because they can't afford it or can't get to it are unable to access that food. How do we bridge that gap a little better? I mean, you guys are doing it, but it seems like that should happen on its own.
Yeah, and you know, laws have changed, and policies within the for-profit world and the food industry are changing to meet that challenge. So on one end, food manufacturers and producers all over the world are now looking at ways to make sure that their processes are more efficient, just so that there's less waste in the system. In
the first place, yeah.
Another thing to consider is that only within the last 5 to 10 years, I couldn't even give you an exact date, the Good Samaritan law was passed that protect organizations like ours and the retailers from the liability of potentially somebody, saying that they got sick from some of the food that was actually donated.
Right.
So once the liability challenge was actually addressed, then your big issue is transportation and logistics of it.
Yeah.
How do the folks who want to now get that food that they know it would be good for people, how do they get it to those folks? And then that's where, Forgotten Harvest will step in, and we provide a logistics service to be able to capture that food and get it to folks.
Right. Let's talk about hunger in this region. I just said, high concentrations of poverty in Detroit, which is true and has been true for a long time. The new reality, though, is that poverty is much more spread out than it used to be. Are you guys getting more demand from areas outside or agencies that serve areas outside the city?
What we're seeing outside the city, because we try to be pretty clear about where we serve and who we serve, so that kind of cuts some folks off at the pass. They know that we're not going to be delivering out to Flint and other places.
Right.
But we do know that local ministries have relationships with ministries outside of the city, and we're familiar with relationships that, they're sharing food. They're sharing food to get it out to other communities that may not have access to the same resources that the Metro Detroit region may have.
Yeah.
We also know that the face of hunger is always evolving and changing. It's not just the folks who we assume are the impoverished, the most impoverished, the folks that are on the corner with the signs.
Sure.
Actually, those are the folks that are hardest for us to get to actually be able to
because they're not engaged really with one of the agencies.
Whether it's a lack of available transportation, whether it's a lack of information about where the services are being provided, or whether it's just simply a challenge for them to actually consume the product that we're getting out there. So if you don't live anywhere and your local church is giving out boxes of food, where do you take that perishable
Where are you
food?
going to cook it? And
Exactly.
where are you going to store it? Yeah.
And what we're really finding is that as the economy is shifting and more people are going back to work, we're finding that the gray space is getting larger. And let me explain that. So 40% of our working economy are folks who are between the ages of 35 and 60 years old. And those that make between $35,000 and $50,000 a year, depending on family size, they don't qualify for SNAP benefits.
For the kind of government assistance,
Exactly.
right?
So the gap has to be filled with outside services like Forgotten Harvest and Gleaners and Focus Hope and other organizations that are out there.
Right.
Now, these are families that are working 2 jobs, may have a job that doesn't help make ends meet, and they're making different decisions. It's not as much we're not going to eat tonight, but we can't have the food that was at this level of quality. We're going to have to spend less, and food is becoming more of a flexible budget item on families' decision-making table. So we're finding that people are making decisions that either are reducing the amount of fresh, healthy food or increasing, the amount of food that is cheaper and could also be unhealthy for their
well,
lives.
and that's a really important point. It's not just about getting food to people. It's about getting them food that's good for them and getting them to make the same healthy choices that we try to get middle class and upper class families to make.
Exactly. One of the most shocking revelations for me since I've been at Forgotten Harvest and really becoming a student of this space is that how closely the link between obesity is to hunger. There are a lot of folks who are making decisions to eat things that are not healthy for them, and it's adding to those ongoing health issues from diabetes to high blood pressure to just having high caloric diets that aren't conducive to a healthy lifestyle. And if we could get more low-cost fruits, vegetables, and healthy foods on the tables of our families, especially our children, we know it will have a positive effect on all of our society.
Right. As I said in the open, 25 years Forgotten Harvest. Sort of cast that out 25 years. Maybe you'll still be the CEO. I'm not sure. Maybe. You're young enough. You could be.
It could be. And it's exciting enough of an organization the work is really meaningful. I mean, this boils down to serving humanity in many ways. And because of that, there is a level of fulfillment that I feel honored and blessed to be able to really, partake in from being in a leadership role here. Forgotten Harvest going forward, we want to continue to make sure that we're doing the best for our community. So that means making sure that the food that we're providing to the community is fresh, that it's healthy for the people that we're serving. We want to make sure that we also raise the volume of the conversation around ending
advocacy.
Hunger.
That's right.
And that involves advocacy, but that also involves partnership.
Yes.
So for many years, there has been a relationship between us and Gleaners that hasn't been necessarily the best partnership. Today we're looking at each other as partners. Not they did what they did over there, but then we did what we did over here. But together we did 82 million pounds for our community. And we're close. We're closer than probably any time in recent history to really making real headway in reducing hunger. But it's going to take more than just us and Gleaners. It's going to take all the social service organizations coming together, sharing information, and figuring out how we can best improve quality of life for people, because hunger really is bigger than food.
All right. Kirk Mayes, CEO of Forgotten Harvest. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Steve.